critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, welcome back to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn. And here on the Muckrakers, we pledge to continue tackling the most pressing and controversial news issues of our time. Our mission is to provide more light and less heat in our unwavering quest to uncover the truth. Stay with us as we shine a light where others won't. Well, today we're going to be looking at last weekend's so-called Summit on Peace in Ukraine. It was held at the Burgenstock resort above Lake Lucerne, beautiful place in Switzerland. They had representatives from around 92 nations and 8 international organizations. They all attended the summit. Somebody who was not there, however, was Russia. They weren't even invited to the event. And President Vladimir Putin, he argues that the summit is simply an attempt by the West to create the illusion of a global anti-Russian coalition and distract attention from the root causes of the conflict. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who is currently deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, he said it was an erratic and dysfunctional event whose participants did not have a clue what they were doing there. He even compared it to the summit, basically to George Orwell's Animal Farm, basically saying that how ideals of equality and freedom can be distorted and betrayed after a ruthless leader takes over. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Well, we're going to discuss all of that today with my brilliant panel, but I'd also like to hear from you. This is how you can get in touch.
Our lines are open. From the U.S. and Canada, call 1-888-201-6425. From the U.K., call 033-0024-1026. And from Australia and New Zealand, call 1-800-670-310. Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
And as always, if you've got any thoughts on the subjects we're going to be discussing today, or indeed if you want to discuss something completely different, do get in touch. It's always good to hear from you, and we've had some brilliant contributions. Now, today's the Muckrakers made up of me, Andrew Eborn, but also the return of Professor Glenn Diesen and Dr. John Laughland. Welcome to you both. Just a reminder, this is a forum for debate and conversation, so feel free to speak and share your thoughts as you see fit. Don't need to wait for me to prompt you. Bit of background, Professor Glenn Diesen is a Norwegian academic and political scientist. He's professor at the University of South Eastern Norway and an associate editor at the Russia in Global Affairs journal. Professor Diesen's main research focuses Russian foreign policy, geoeconomics conservatism, and Eurasian integration. And my other guest today, Dr. John Laughland, is director of Forum for Democracy International and a lecturer in political science and history at the Catholic Institute of the Vendée in Western France. He was director of the Eurosceptic think tank European Foundation until 2008 and director of studies at the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation in Paris until 2018. He worked at the European Parliament from 2018 to 2020. Itself. Right, the front lines in Ukraine have barely moved since the end of 2022, despite tens of thousands of dead on both sides in relentless trench warfare, the bloodiest fighting in Europe since World War II. The so-called Peace Summit planned basically calls for Russia to withdraw from all territories claimed by Kyiv. Isn't there zero chance of Russia agreeing to this? Let's start with you, Glenn.
Well, no, I don't think so because, Russia has considered this to be an existential threat. They see the incursion of NATO into Ukraine, worst case obviously being NATO taking over the Crimea, where Russia's Black Sea Fleet would be. This would be an existential threat they couldn't live with. But that being said, the actual summit now, it didn't go into that much specifics because a lot of the key points were quite, not that specific exactly for the key reason that they needed to go for the quantity. They needed a lot of participants. So if you read through the agreements they had, they listed, for example, 3 crucial points. One was, nuclear installations had to be kept safe. Global food security, so transitioning through the Black Sea was important. And the third was, prisoners of war and civilians detained, including Ukrainian children in Russia, all have to be exchanged. Now, this all of this was largely unproblematic, and they could have invited Russia for this. But again, they had a dilemma. Do you want to get many participants, or do you want to actually push some key points? So they didn't really put that strong demands on anyone, so they could build up the proper quantity. And this is also why the whole thing appeared to be a bit of a PR stunt, to be honest, to be able to simply build up a narrative that the world is mobilized against, or at least world opinion is mobilized against Russia. So, but if you look at the content, what they actually signed under, it's it's not very specific, which is why the media, I think, largely avoided this part.
Yeah, John?
I think that's exactly right. It's what they call a nothing burger, isn't it? It's a mountain that has given birth to a mouse, as they say in French. These 3 points, the ones that Glenn Diesen has just mentioned, that's right. It's true, of course, that the communique also talks about the territorial integrity of Ukraine. That's par for the course. But your question, Andrew, was, would Russia ever agree to liberating or returning the provinces of Ukraine that it currently occupies? And the answer is absolutely not. Again, as Glenn has said, Crimea is definitely never going to be given back. The other 4 regions have, of course, been annexed, as we know, by Russia, and Russia has been very vehement in saying that it will that it regards them now as part of its territory, and that it will use all means necessary to defend its territory. That means including nuclear weapons.